Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Joining us on the Newsmaker line right now is a fellow Arizona boy and a brother of mine in a sense, because we both were on, in a way, the dark side of the ring about the great superstar Billy Graham. Such an honor to have on the show Mr. Bill Anderson. Are you with me, sir?
Yes, sir, James. I'm here.
It's a pleasure to have you on. And like I said, we were on the dark side of the ring about superstar Billy Graham. I was the one lucky enough to do an interview to promote his book, and I was asked by Vice, would you mind if we use that? And for those who don't know, the majority of the clips that were used that said voice of Billy Graham on there, that was my interview. So I count that as me being on, even though I wasn't really on there. But
Fantastic.
You certainly were.
Fantastic, yeah. Quite an honor. When I look back over my whole life, and I first laid eyes on Superstar as a fan in 1973. I was visiting my sister in Chicago and went down to the Chicago Amphitheater and saw Billy on the show. Just saw him walk past me down the aisle to the ring, and I thought, wow, this is fantastic, man. I'm just such a mark for the business. I was just a kid, a teenager, young teenager. And so little did I know that so many years later that we'd be best friends, and we'd be going out to lunch all the time. And I would, be at his funeral and also do the dark side of the ring in honor of him as one of the several guests that were involved. So, what an honor that was to be involved. Just amazing.
What did you think of the finished product of the episode?
I thought it was good, except, and there's not much you can do about it, to be honest with you, is I thought his own kids were the damper on the whole thing. I thought his son in particular, saying that I was never really proud of my dad or something like that. I thought that was kind of one of the worst things you could have said. I was always worried that I was saying something offensive, but telling the truth at the same time. But everybody knew Billy did steroids, and I was just reiterating that fact. But his own children did him no service, and I just was a little disappointed in that.
I would agree, yeah. So you said you were a fan. You said you saw Billy when you were a teenager. What attracted you to get involved in this crazy business of ours in the first place?
Tell you right away, it was John Tolis and Freddie Blassie.
Wow.
1971, I was living in California at the time. I was watching TV one day, and I see Tolis throw the Monsel's powder in Freddie Blassie's eyes, and I was captivated. I was 15 years old at the time, or just turning 15, and I said to myself, oh my God, this is what I want to do with my life. As crazy as it sounds, back in 1971, to have a dream of being a wrestler, I found myself mesmerized, and I was so proud. Years later, I became very, very close friends with John Tolis, wrestled him several times, and actually got to present Freddie Blassie in a WWF ring at the LA Sports Arena, a plaque for his 50 years of wrestling service. Wow. I don't know what year that was, maybe in 88 or 89 or so. And had Freddie come into the ring. And so, I got to really get to know my legends, and that I was a mark for and a fan of. And so it was a great thing. And that's what prompted me to want to be a wrestler.
That's awesome. And you came in at the time when there was still the territory system. You went all around. I won't step on what Hannibal did, but I'll try to add upon it. There's a great interview with you out there for those who want to find it on YouTube with Hannibal. I would definitely recommend that. You mentioned something in passing in talking about the territory system that Jim Cornette references often, and that is, and I wrote this down, this is all that I wrote down for my question, marijuana pills. Could you explain what does that mean?
Exactly what that is.
Okay.
Oh my God. Well, Nick Goulas, the promoter in Nashville, and he was so far behind in the times. Poor Nick. Nice guy. He was strictly a businessman, and he thought that you got high with marijuana by taking pills. It was all in pill form. And one time in particular, he pulled myself. I was teaming up with Chris Colt and Mike Boyette, the hippie Mike Boyette. And I was wrestling as Bill Colt. I was a valet / manager / six-man partner, a six-guy, for tag matches, six-man tags. So because I was still a rookie, man. I was in my first year of the business. I was 17 years old and just a kid. And Nick pulled us in the dressing room. I remember in Memphis at the Mid-South Coliseum. And he says, if you boys would stay off those marijuana pills, and I wasn't even on the pills. I didn't do that. I was still drinking milk. Chris was the drinker, and so was Boyette, and I was a milk drinker, and so he pulled us aside and he says, if you boys will stay off those marijuana pills, you'd be making double the money you're making right now. And I was thinking to myself, as just a kind of a smart ass kid, I'm happy with the money I'm making. I was making $750 a week, which was damn good for a 17-year-old in 1975. I was doing quite well for myself as far as I was concerned. Chris was making about $1,500 a week, and Nick, was telling us we would have been making $3,000 or $1,000, $1,500 more a week if we would stay off the pills. And that's what I remember about Nick always was staying off those marijuana pills.
There you go.
And, they didn't have any clue, those guys down there. And they also didn't have any clue that half of their baby faces were asking us as heels for drugs that we did not even have. I won't even name names, but several of them would come up to us because we were the long hairs. I had long blonde hair, and I was supposed to be some kind of a hippie / Hell's Angel biker, whatever. And they came up to us, the baby faces, thinking we had drugs, and it was such a stereotype. It was just so weird. And they wanted those marijuana pills from us.
And that was a Nick Goulasism? That was something Nick Goulas said?
Yeah, that was Nick Goulas, and I don't know. I had more interactions with Nick than I did with Jerry Jarrett, who I was working for also down there at the time. But what a great circuit that was. I have nothing but fond memories of it. Wrestling, they were wrestling 3 shows a night. They were doing 3 different territories a night down there. I mean, as part of the one territory, and working in like 7 states. It was a hell of a place to be in mid-70s for getting experience and everything.
Very cool. I grew up in New Jersey, northern New Jersey. Madison Square Garden was a 20-minute ride for me. The Meadowlands Arena was even closer. I couldn't walk there, but it was a short drive. So there's an arrogance that comes along with that when you think that all of what you see now of WWE was once just thought of as New York, as the New York territory.
Yes.
But you started working there in '83. When did you start to realize that the wind was at their back and they were going to start kind of taking over the world?
Probably at WrestleMania 1 and 2. The WrestleMania started changing everything. I helped set up the cage for WrestleMania 2 in LA. That was the year they did 3 cities: Chicago, New York, and LA.
Yep.
And LA was Bundy against Hogan.
Yep.
And I set up the cage for that. And I think in 80, that would have been like 85. I think in 85, I realized this is bigger than anybody realized. When, again, just like Goulas was doing, WWF was running 3 shows a night back in those days, too. They had an A, B, and C crew. And Hogan was like part of the A crew, and then you went on down to, maybe Don Morocco and Pat Patterson headlining like a crew, and it was really something to be on those shows. I was really fortunate, and I owe that to Mike LaBelle in L.A. Because I came into work for Mike in '82, and I was there only for the last 6 months of Mike's promotion. And when he sold out to Vince, Vince didn't want to fly in, a whole crew of like 26 guys or so to a house show like at L.A. or San Diego or Fresno, Bakersfield. So he wanted an undercard supplied through Mike, like of local guys, so to cut trans down. And I was lucky to be a part of that with Gordman and Goliath, John Tolis, Rick Drayson, Wildman Jack Armstrong, Steve Party, Jerry Motti, and a few guys like that. And I was very fortunate. I got along great with Mike LaBelle and Jeff Walton, who was his publicist, and when he sold it, they recommended me as one of their guys to work the undercard. So that got me in good with the road agents, Chief Jay Strongbow, Rene Goulet, Lanza, and Pat Patterson especially, and Terry Garvin. And Pat Patterson helped me quite a bit, put me over some of the guys that were far bigger than me on a national basis. Put me over Orndorff one night at the LA Sports Arena.
Wow.
in '84, I believe, and put me over the Magnificent Zulu in San Diego.
Wow.
At the Sports Arena there. And I had seen Zulu work in Detroit for many years in Cobo Arena for the Sheik, because my dad lived in Detroit. I'm from Detroit, so I would go back and visit my dad in the summer months, and I'd see Zulu wrestle, and he was a huge guy. And here he is, Pat Patterson saying, "Okay, Billy, you're over Zulu," and blah blah blah. And it was like, wow, I'm shocked.
That's amazing.
But like always, I did what I was told, and fantastic stuff.
Absolutely, that is amazing. And you mentioned Hogan briefly. I guess now would be the time to mention him. Your profile picture on Facebook right now is you and Hulk together. I don't think it needs to be said that, growing up in New Jersey in the 80s, that Hogan was my hero and remains so. Yeah. What was it like being on the same, show as Hulk Hogan? And what are your thoughts on his passing? I
can tell you, through the years of the 80s and early 90s, I wrestled on shows that Hogan was on. I ring announced many matches of Hogan's versus several different people. And I was a referee during that period of time in California for WWF and refereed many of his matches. And I can tell you, he was always a very, very nice guy and polite guy personally. And there was nothing like standing in the ring and the goosebumps you would get when you introduced him and you'd hear the crowd light up. There was just nothing like it. The closest I can tell you, the closest to it would have been the Ultimate Warrior. Mm-hmm. And that came second to Hogan. It was just magic when I introduced Hogan and he was coming out, or when I was refereeing. I also did other things involving Hogan. I set up a wrestling ring for the very first Dolly Parton show in California, and Hogan wrestled Iron Mike Sharp at the Chuck Landis Country Club in Reseda, and I set the ring up for that. And I was hanging around Hogan that evening, and he was a hell of a guy. It was just I don't know, he just made me have goosebumps even when I just standing near him. I hate to sound really so markish, but I'm telling you, the guy had the it factor. And as Bischoff used to always say, you got to put asses in seats. Well, Hogan did just that, and there was just nothing like him, And it was a combination, obviously, of Vince promoting him right, but Hogan had the it factor, and always had it, and to the day he died, at his autograph sessions, and you could just see it when he walked in. All eyes went to him. Just like in the old days of Hollywood, and all eyes went to Clark Gable, and
That's
all
true.
eyes went to Hulk Hogan.
Absolutely. And I don't know how much you want to talk about politics on there, but when you see some of the 20-something-year-olds that are uppity and saying nasty things about him now, which, by the way, how low class is that? The guy just passed away. But when you see that, what do you think of the fact that there are so many arrogant kids out there that don't realize the magnitude of what the guy was and what he did for wrestling?
Yeah, it's their ignorance. It's part of it's just the way society is nowadays. It's the reason in 2001 I closed my wrestling school in California. I had a school in Riverside, California, for a number of years. Training different people, and I closed my school because I was tired of the mentality of the kids. And obviously, this has nothing to do with Hogan per se, but it's just there was kids after I was training them for a year or so. They looked at the pictures on the wall in my school, and they're like, "Oh, you used to wrestle, didn't you?" And I'm thinking, like, "Oh my God, are you dumb? Are you kidding me? You're just figuring this out. What is wrong with you? Do you not study the business? You need to study history of the business." I studied wrestling. This is why I was very successful in Mexico. I can tell you this, and I know it's going to sound like I'm the biggest mark on earth, but I used to go into dressing rooms with and be in the main event, and I'd have a stack of magazines in my Lucha Libre Mexican magazines in my suitcase, and I'd get autographs from some of the guys on the show, and they loved me for it, and they loved me because I didn't speak a word of Spanish, but they knew I respected them. Respect is the key word. It didn't take a word of English to communicate when you present them with a picture of themselves in front of them, that they think like, wow, this gringo's okay. He's not that bad. And I did that many times, and I'm proud of it. And I still have all those autographed covers of magazines in my photo albums. And and that's what I did because I was a history buff. I did that with everything. I was an Old West history buff. I used to sit in the library for hours and read and read and read and read. Well, when I got into wrestling, I went back through the history of wrestling too, and I tried to understand and study. And when I met wrestlers, I didn't have to be told their life story. I knew who they were. The first time I met Dangerous Danny McShane in at a CAC reunion in Studio City, California in 1989, nobody had to tell me who this older gentleman was with the solid white hair that looked like Colonel Sanders, sitting at a table all by himself and nobody talking to him. Nobody had to tell me who that was. I looked over and I go, "Oh my God, that's Dangerous Danny McShane." Back in the 60s, one of the toughest guys in the business. And I walked up to him and took a picture with him and sat with him and talked with him. And the same with Ricky Romero at another convention, at another CAC. And they were being ignored. And in Ricky's case, he had diabetes. He had lost a leg. He's sitting in a wheelchair. And this guy, I had seen wrestle live in Phoenix in 73 at a show. And I knew exactly who Rapid Ricky Romero was. And they appreciate that. The stars appreciate it. I appreciated it. And to this day, Ricky's kids appreciate the fact that I noticed who he was. And that's the thing is these kids nowadays they think wrestling started with Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Mm-hmm.
They think that is old school, going back to Steve Austin. And it's like, you got to be kidding me, man. I mean, I go back to an era where I was worshiping guys that wore freaking burlap sacks for trunks. You know those old trunks I'm talking about. They're like wool, like it's like steel wool.
Yeah.
I don't know how they survived in the ring wrestling with those trunks on. And
I can't believe they didn't breathe very well, those things.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I go back to is studying the real old timers. And although I didn't start getting into wrestling until 1971, I did all the backtracking I could get with magazines and everything else to understand territories, names, the history of the territories, where everybody came from. And then I got the chance to go to different places. One was Portland, Oregon. With my trainer, Kurt von Steiger, him and his wife invited me to live with them for a while up in Portland in 73 and 74. So I cut out of my school in Avondale, Arizona, and I went up to Portland with them. And there I got to hang out with Tough Tony Bourne and Dutch Savage and a very young Jimmy Snuka. I used to go to Sam LaPrenzi's gym to work out, and there's Jimmy in there bench pressing 500 pounds. And Killer Carl Krupp used to come over and have dinner, and so did Maurice Vachon. Jack Briscoe used to come over. This kind of stuff happened when I was, I was a junior in high school. And I knew my history. I knew who Mad Dog Vachon was. I knew who all these guys were. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, this is so unbelievably great, And
you had the foresight too to before everybody had a little portable phone in there or a little portable camera in their pocket at all times. You were taking pictures that a lot of guys didn't take, and those pictures exist today. And you post them on Facebook, like your profile picture with Hulk. What you've posted several with all the stars.
Right, James. And the thing is, those pictures were never meant for the human eye, except for myself. Because when I took these pictures in the 70s and 80s, 90s, there was obviously no Facebook or network computers, social media type things. They were up in my photo albums, and I have about 35 of these photo albums that are about 3 inches thick, full of pictures and stuff. I haven't even scanned all my pictures. I scanned a whole bunch and posted. And it is quite a bit, It's on Facebook. If you look through my stuff, there's probably 20,000 pictures at least.
I believe it.
Yeah, it's just. But yeah, I just did it. I don't know why. I mean, I did it. It wasn't to show off. It wasn't for the future. It was for me. It was just for me. It was for. I guess when I become an old man, which I'm getting there very rapidly, I would have these things to look back on and be proud of the men and women I've met, and I am very proud of the people I've got to know and become very good friends with. Guys like Terry Funk and just I mean it goes on and on. So many guys at WWE that are gone now: Hercules, Dino Bravo, Andre. They were all friends, and. Blackjack Lanza, and so many guys, that are gone now. And then losing Hogan was just a real big chunk of it again. The biggest chunk gone of that 80s time.
Yeah. That was weird too, because I had a feeling for a while that something wasn't right. And I even called his beach shop the night before. And I'm like, you guys should put out a statement. I said, I know you're probably, a 20-year-old kid working, at the checkout counter. But if you could get a message to them, tell us that he's okay, or tell us that he needs prayers. Tell us something. And it seems like Ric Flair had the same feeling that night because he called Jimmy Hart, and Jimmy Hart had the same feeling. not going to get all God and all that kind of thing. I'm religious, but I don't like to, thump it over people's heads. But there was definitely something in the air in the hours leading up to the terrible news, and it. Well, that's a downer.
well, it's understandable. It has to be said. I feel the same way. I mean, I can just say when he passed and that news hit the airwaves, I was just really in shock, and it was just like family died. Maybe even closer than family. I probably spent more time in dressing rooms with Hulk and guys like him than I did with my own family, and so it was just a sad part of the way life is, and we all know we're all going to go. There's no avoiding that. That we're all gonna go to heaven or hell, and just Hogan leaving though still really hit home hard, and very sad. And obviously we lost a lot that week. Malcolm Jamal Warner, and Ozzy Osbourne, and Chuck Mangione, and guys like that. Great talented musicians and actors and wrestlers, and there were others. Other people. Roddy Hogan, the wrestling fan,
the super fan, right?
Yeah. Roddy used to message me. I once every 2 to 3 weeks I get a message from Roddy, and we were friends. I never met him personally. We were friends on Facebook, and seemed like a really nice guy, and he was always very respectful to me. And I was very sad when he passed away.
I had only seen him in the crowd, and I didn't know who he was. I knew that he was a super fan, but I didn't know who he was until I saw that he passed. And I was, that was another reason that maybe he was supposed to go first.
Yeah, that was really strange when you think about it. It's,
the super fan that he was, right?
Yeah. Just very oddly coincidental. So
let's talk about something that you've never talked about before, and that's training the Ultimate Warrior and Sting. Of course, you've talked about it a billion times, but those two guys, obviously, they went on to become some of the biggest stars that wrestling has ever seen. I have a question for you from my son in a moment, but what was it like training for those guys and taking bumps for them and working with those guys in their infancy in wrestling?
Well, when I was training those guys was in 1985. It was the summer of 1985 in Reseda, California. Red Bastien owned the wrestling school that we were doing this at. And I shouldn't say school. It was it's kind of like WWE Hall of Fame. The school was actually a racquetball court in a Nautilus Aerobics Plus gym. So we had a ring set up in this one racquetball court that sat there for like 3 solid months. And we worked with Sting and Warrior, and there was 2 other guys, Mark Miller and another guy, Garland Donahoe, and then 2 other guys were part of this group that were brought in separately, and they were Dave Sheldon, who later became the Angel of Death, and Steve DeSalvo, who was Strinkler Steve DeSalvo in Calgary and Puerto Rico, and I think he worked with Steve Strong also, another Steve Strong from the original California guy. And so there were 6 guys in this class, and they were all bigger than me. At the time, I wish I was that big again, but I was 220 pounds, 6'2", 220, and I let these 6 guys pound the living hell out of me. When Red would say, "Okay, Billy, let's show him what a body slam is," I'd say, "Okay," and I'd have all 6 of these guys lift me up and slam me. And I didn't realize until much later on that it was very unhealthy for me to do it that way. And it was going to impede my life later on as I got older, dealing with all the bumps I'd taken. But I noticed right away that Steve Borden had an unusual amount of spring in his legs. And I gathered real quickly that Steve would have been a premier athlete at any sport, no different than Kurt Hennig. Steve would have been a great football player, basketball player, and I'm talking NBA or any of these sports. I think he would have gone on. He could have been the world's greatest golfer. Steve had it in him to be the best at everything he did. Absolutely same as Kurt Hennig. And that was detectable real fast. I didn't notice anything so outstanding about the Jim Hellwig, the Warrior, to be honest with you, other than he had an unusual amount of belief in himself. And him and Sting instantly sided together and broke off from the other two guys that were with them, Garland and Mark Miller. They sided together and sent out photos while they were training to Jerry Lawler and to try to get into Memphis. And at the same time, Red Bastien was trying to get him into Calgary for Stu Hart. So one day, I'm skipping a lot of stuff here, but one day, toward the end of their training, after about 3-month mark, Jim and Steve called me and said, "Bill, can we meet you at Gold's Gym in Venice? We want to talk to you about something. Just 3 of us, nobody else." And so I met him down there, and I remember it so vividly. We sat on the hood of somebody's car down there and outside in the sunshine, and we were just talking, and they said, "Look, you have no vested interest in us." And I didn't. I wasn't being paid to train them guys. I was being paid by Red Bastien with an apartment to live in. Red, I was going through a divorce, and Red said, "Billy, I'll let you stay at my place rent free until you get another place, and as long as you help me," because Red couldn't get in the ring and work with these guys because he had artificial hips, and he couldn't take the bumps and really show them everything like he wanted to. So he needed a young, healthy guy, and I was in my mid-20s at the time. So he says, "Billy, I need you to do this." So I did. Red was like a mentor to me, always like a father figure to me. So whatever Red asked, I would do. And anyway, Sting and Warrior, they were down at Gold's Gym, and they said, "We sent pictures. We have pictures from Red Bastien that he sent to Stu, or pictures in Tennessee. What do you think we should do?" And I said, "Well, 10 years ago in '75, I went down and worked for Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett and Nick Lewis and all them guys. It's a hell of a territory. You'll get nothing but experience, which is what you need more than anything else." I says, "You're not going to make a lot of money, I don't think. But it's experience is what you need. You got to get that before you can move on to other territories." And they said, "What about Calgary?" And I said, "Calgary's great. Stu Hart's the legend. It's a great place to go. But think of it. It's like September. Do you want to go to Calgary in September with the snow? Or do you want to go to Tennessee and deal with that down there? They're winners versus Canadian winners."
And
they said, they said, "Billy, we think we go to Tennessee." And I said, "If you're asking me, that's what my opinion would be, to go to Tennessee." And that's exactly what they did. They got a hold of Lawler, and they went in and broke off from the wrestling camp and went in to work for Lawler as whatever Rock and Blade and whatever it was.
Runners, right?
Yeah, the Blade Runners and all that. And then they went on to, they went to Watts and in Dallas and everything else that they did, and obviously it became what it was.
So my kid is like us. He has to know everything about everything, and he came to me the other day and he asked me a question. I thought, I'm going to ask Bill Anderson that question, and he said, if fortunes had worked out differently and Warrior had gone to WWE and Warrior had gone to WCW and Sting had gone to WWE, would they have been as successful in those territories as they ended up being where they actually did go?
Great question. A very great question. My gut feeling, and of course this could just be the way I've seen different talent handled by each of the two big ones. I'd say no. I'd say no. They would not have worked out the same. First of all, what later was determined to be a fact is Sting didn't like the WWE amount of dates they worked, which was almost every day, and I don't think the hierarchy in WCW, whether it was the different cliques of Kevin Sullivan's clique or Hogan's clique or whatever's clique, would have tolerated Warrior coming in, because first of all, Warrior needed one person kind of telling him what to do. He didn't need a group faction telling him. When he went to WWE, Pat Patterson and Vince guided him to what he needed, what they needed out of him, and they learned very quickly what they wanted was him to run down the aisle, run the ropes, clotheslines, things like that. So they got out of him what they were looking for. I think with Sting, I think they would have screwed it all up. Sting would have been relegated to an Arn Anderson type role, and just put down to nothing. Or like, look what a decent worker Paul Roma was.
Yeah,
and he was absolutely nothing for Vince. You know, it's just the way I see it. Is I don't think they would have had the success they had. It was timing. It was everything working in their favor. Steve, fortunately, wanted to wrestle a lot, and he had the great talent of Ric Flair and guys like that down there to guide him along, and Ricky Steamboat and other talent down there to help him a lot. So that I love that question. No one's ever asked me that before.
Yeah, my son hit me with that one. I'm like, I can't even picture it because
very smart, smart of your son, because no one, like I said, no one's asked me that in 40 years since those guys were trained, and no one's ever asked that. And I totally believe it would not have worked the same for Sting and Warrior to have gone to the other promotion first.
Very cool. I just interviewed Rod Price. You mentioned that you were trained. You were his trainer. You mentioned Angel of Death, another guy who was around the Dallas territory quite a bit.
Yeah.
Was there any guys that you trained that you thought this guy is going to be massive, and it just maybe didn't work out as well as it should have for them?
Well, I mean, I personally, I think Dave Sheldon could have gone a lot farther than he did. But Dave had issues. One of the nicest guys I've ever met. You know, I trained Louie Spicolli too.
That's my next question. Yes, sir.
And Louie went to all of them. He worked for, you know, Vince, Paul Heyman, and WCW, and independents in between.
It's amazing. He was in Global. He was in Abrams UWF. I mean, when you really think of it, he was everywhere.
Yeah, I booked him in all of those. I booked him in Continental Wrestling. I booked with Bill Dundee as the booker. I booked him down there. I took him to Japan on 2 tours for FMW for 4 weeks at a time in 91 and 92. And I took him to Mexico too, as one of the mercenaries with my other partner, Tim Patterson. Louis was as good as they come, and more important to me personally, he was a hell of a nice guy. I got along great with him, and Louis knew history too, and that's what I liked about Louis too. He wasn't some guy that would walk up to a Tommy Rich or a Sid Vicious and say, "Who are you? What have you done? What? Who are you?" He wasn't like that at all. And he knew the characters. He knew the guys, just like I did. You know, I'm not going to be standing there talking to handsome Jimmy Valiant and go, "Did you ever wrestle? What's your name?" You know, and all this stuff. You know, something stupid. And speaking of stupid, I could tell you Frankie Kazarian stories that would go about 5 hours long. And he's
I
one
had
of the
Frankie
guys
on a number of times. He's a nice guy, but I'm a little afraid of what you're going to say.
Yeah. No, I know Frankie. I helped train Frankie after he left Killer Kowalski. He came right to California, and he looked me up, because Kowalski gave him my phone number. And I started booking Frankie. But, you know, he's a guy that is very controversial in some of his decisions in his career. I think Frankie could have gone a lot farther than he's gone. I mean, I think a lot farther. He had the looks and he had the talent. But there's something still missing with the attitude, with the attitude. But I trained a lot of guys that kind of fell short on maybe some getting in the ring in front of a large crowd. I'll give you an example. I trained a guy named Marvin Oliver, and this would have been about 87 or so. Real good-looking guy, black guy, good physique on him. He was a football player, and, I mean, he had muscle on muscle, and he looked really great. And one day I took him to Fresno for TV tapings. I took a whole bunch of guys all the time for TV tapings, anywhere from 6 to 16 guys per tapings every 3 weeks when they were on the West Coast. And Vince saw him in the dressing room and liked him instantly. And he says, "What's your name?" And he says, "Oh, Marvin." And he says, "Who are you working with?" And he says, "Oh, I don't know. I'm still waiting to find out. Chief is supposed to be figuring out an opponent for me." And Vince went right up to Chief and pulled Chief aside. And next thing I know, Chief walks up to me and he says, "Billy, I'm going to put your guy Marvin with Steve Lombardi, and I want to see what he can do out there." It's at the Celland Arena in Fresno, and there's like probably 10,000 people there. And make a long story short, Marvin had done great in the workouts at the gym and everything. He'd done fantastic. Put him out in the ring. Lombardi ate him up, spit him out, and it wasn't Lombardi's fault. It was he had to, or the match would have stunk. And Marvin just froze and fell apart working in front of people, which is why I had told Steve and Jim to go to Tennessee and start working in Memphis and Nashville and all these cities in front of people and get all that out of your system of being a fan favorite and all this cheers or whatever you're going to get down there, and get it all out of your system so that you can perform perfectly down there and get the experience you need. And Marvin didn't have that luxury. I kind of instantly put him right to TV tapings, and it killed him. He kind of lost a lot of interest to even work a lot after that. He did a few independents, and that's it. And then he faded away into obscurity. Well, it is, that was partially my fault, but he had to learn one way or the other whether he had it or not. Yeah. And I could tell you this, by the same token, saying what I just said, I took Louie Spicolli on his very first match, the TV tapings in Duluth and Rochester, Minnesota. Terry Garvin told me to bring 4 guys up. I took myself, Tim Patterson, Louie Spicolli, and I don't even remember, another one of my students. Took us 4 up to those tapings. This would have been in 88. And Louie had never worked before in front of a crowd. Never in front of a crowd. So but I had so much faith in Louie. I loved him. I knew he would not fall apart. And they put him with Ron Bass, Outlaw Ron Bass, the first night and the second night against Greg Valentine. And each night he worked soon as Greg came through the curtain and Ron came through the curtain, Tony, I remember it vividly. Tony Gurria walked up and he says, "How do you do?" And he goes, "Hey, you did fine. He did fine." And then Tony walks up to me. He says, "Why haven't you been bringing this kid more?" I said, "Well, because I lied. I told him he'd been working a year around California, or they would have never used him." And I told Chief. I eventually confided in Chief about 10 years later the truth. Chief called me one day on Christmas, and while we were talking, I said, "Chief, I got to tell you something." Chief J. Strombo, in case people don't know. I know you know. But and he was the top road agent, and I said, "Chief, I BS'd you that day in Rochester and Duluth, those two shows, that Lewis had worked a lot." I said he had never worked in the ring except in training. And he says, "Well, he did a hell of a job." And I said, "Yeah, I know, but you would have never trusted me that much." He said, "No, goddamn, no, I wouldn't have trusted you." And I said, "Well, Chief, I had to do what I had to do." And it paid off because he was a good worker. And he says, "Yeah, well, you can't do stuff like that, Billy." And I know. Yeah, I know. So anyway, but that's how much faith I had in Spicolli.
Yeah.
And
what's cool about him, though, is that it seems like everybody liked him because he worked with Candido, and Candido had his issues with, the Click and Scott Hall and all those kind of guys. And then one of the last things he did, he was kind of a quasi-member of the NWO with Hall and doing promos with Hall. And it's pretty amazing to think about that.
I can tell you why Candido liked him. First of all, because Spicolli liked to work. And obviously Chris Candido liked to work. And Chris was not lazy in the ring. He didn't want to go in there and just throw a couple punches. He wanted to go in and wrestle. And when he got somebody like Spicolli in the ring, that's what Spicolli did. I can tell you this because I was standing right there. We did TV tapings up in Calgary and Edmonton in 88 or 89. And Spicolli, Chief came up to me and he says, "Billy, will Spicolli have a good match with?" Because I took Louie Spicolli and Tim Patterson with me, and he says, "Will Louie have a good match with Ricky Steamboat?" I says, "Oh yeah, he'll have a hell of a match with Steamboat." And so I walk over with Lewis and Chief and Steamboat and Spicolli. He says, "Hey Ricky, we're working with each other," and he says, "I want to do every spot exactly in order that you did with the Randy Savage at WrestleMania 3. I want to do it all." And he's calling the match, Spicolli. Wow. And Steamboat says, "You think you could do all that?" And he says, "Yes." And they went out there and did a TV match like that.
Wow.
And Chief, he believed in Spicolli enough where he was, "Well, let him go. The guy can work. You let him go and do it."
It's amazing.
But that was the difference of Spicolli versus a lot of guys I knew. I wasn't like that. I can tell you that. Chief asked me the night my son was born in 1989. I was in Fresno at Selland Arena again, and my Pat Patterson walks up to me. He says, "Billy, your wife just called from Redlands, California, and her water broke. She wants you to come home now." And I says, "Okay, well, being the worker I am, I got to make some money here before I go home." And I said, I went to Chief. I said, "Chief, I gotta go. My wife's having a baby, and I got like a 3-hour drive home." And he says, "Billy, I'm going to do you a favor. Who do you want to work with?" I just put me in with the Bushwhackers because I mean, how much easier of a match is that? And I didn't even have to do the job. They put me in with another guy as a tag team, and they did the ramming of the head or whatever, and the belly and all that bullshit. And anyway, the other guy did the job, and I got my ass out of there and got my car and started heading home. And Chief did me the favor. But, if that would have been Spicolli, he would have said, put me in with Stone Cold type guy, or something like that. I want to work. I was like, no, I mean, I want lazy. I want the easiest match out of there. And I want to come home feeling the same way as when I got there. And but Lewis was a special guy, and his passing hurts every single day. every single day.
Well, we mentioned Abrams UWF briefly. You mind if I ask you about another company you worked for briefly and the magnitude of that implosion? NWC in Vegas. And if I remember correctly, they ran commercials basically showing clips of the Ultimate Warrior in a WWE ring saying he was coming in, and it never happened. And what was the story behind all that?
It actually did and didn't happen. I was asked by T.C. Martin, the promoter, to do a favor for him and get a hold of Warrior and try to get Warrior to come in and work with Honky Tonk Man. I did the favor. I called the Warrior, and he says, Billy, I usually don't do, like small shows or anything like that. He says, but I am a little itchy to get back in the ring. And he was living here in Scottsdale. Mm-hmm. So Vegas wasn't that far of a plane ride or a car ride. I don't even know how he got there. But anyway, he did go up there because I was the guy that did the interviews for the TV show. Mm-hmm. And I did Warrior interviews with Warrior.
Wow.
And Honky Tonk Man and Mick Foley and all the guys that worked for TC. And but what happened was, I guess, the night of the show, and I know this is very trivial and it'll make people hate Warrior even more than they already do, but I guess he got to the building, to the Silver Nugget Casino or whatever it was, and got there, and his name was below Honky Tonk's on the marquee. It said something like Honky Tonk Man versus Ultimate Warrior. And supposedly that just bent him out of shape. And he just kept driving and went on home.
Oh, man.
And all the publicity they had done, all the interviews went to waste. And yes, you're right. They were plugging Warrior's school, his Warrior's gym, his wrestling gym and school in Scottsdale. And there was gonna be a partnership there where Warrior was possibly going to buy in and do a lot of work with TC, and Warrior was not stupid. You see how he instantly well, if you want me, you got to take my school and gym with me, and take that publicity, and all those shows are airing all over the country in Vegas and things like that. So, Warrior was smart to promote himself. But again, the ego gets in the way. And, Jim had, where something I would disagree with Jim Hellwig is Jim had a little too much belief in himself. And his motto was always believe, but he believed too much, and too much is too much, Like Tony Montana said in Scarface, nothing exceeds like excess. And Jim's excess was his ego, and it was just not good. And then of course I take the hit for a lot of it because I'm the one that pushed. Yeah, Jim will be there at the show, and I got him to the station where we did the TV tapings. I did all that. And that all worked, and yet fell short of the actual show. And so that was that story. But T.C. Martin had a heck of a thing going, bringing in Sabu, Jim Neidhart, Virgil, and he had the midgets on the show. He had
Rob Van Dam was there too.
Rob Van Dam. He had great talent, and he had the Bushwhackers and. Oh my God! Yeah. He had so many guys.
I talked to Rob Van Dam about that a couple years ago, and this was before Sabu died. And he's like, what Sabu used to call NCW? He called it the Techno Company because the introduction theme song was a techno song. So he said whenever they talk about it, he's like, "Oh yeah, that was the Techno Company." I don't know why, but that strikes me funny. But there you go.
Sabu and Mick Foley's matches were legendary there. They went into the casino one time, and which was really dangerous and unheard of. They're probably lucky they didn't get shot. by security. Because you can just imagine start flipping over tables with people's money. Oh my God,
that was crazy.
Yeah, it was a wild promotion.
It was, but it was very cool though. That's the cool time about wrestling though, is because right then you had ECW on the East Coast starting to spring up and do stuff like that, and NCW was doing that, and in Japan, FMW was taking it to a crazy level. You worked at some FMW. What did you think of that style? And did you like that kind of like exploding pool death matches?
Here's the deal. I worked there. I did 5 1-month tours in 91, 92, and 93. Those were the 3 years I was involved with the promotion. Red Bastien originally got me involved with that promotion because they needed, Red used to process the passports for all the Americans going over in L.A., downtown L.A., get their working visas together. And Red finally got tired of doing it and passed it over to me, which I gladly did it. It was $50 a guy. So I was handling the passports for like Mike Awesome, all the guys from Florida, Horace Boulder, Hogan's nephew, and Mark Starr, Jimmy Backlund, different guys. I was doing the passports for them all. And I would take that $50 and running because that was good little indie money for me on the side in 90 and 91, 92, 93. So I was doing that on the side, and then I finally got invited to go. So I got to take some of my friends with me. I took Lou Fabiano, who was trained by APA. I took him on my first tour in 91. But then I went back and took Louie Spicolli on a month tour, and Tim Patterson on another month tour, and then Louie and Tim on 2 other 1-month tours, helping my friends out and getting them some work. And I personally did not partake in any of the barbed wire matches. Louie did. Onita really liked him and put him in a couple of the wire matches. Louie was game for anything. I personally, I didn't care for it. I mean, it wasn't my style. I was more of a wrestler, and I enjoyed working with the wrestlers of the group and not the brawlers like that. But I got to fulfill fantasies of mine. I got to wrestle the original Sheik and Sabu in tag matches, and Tiger Jeet Singh also. I'd seen him wrestle while I was in Detroit visiting my dad back in the 70s. And so here I am in the 90s wrestling Tiger Jeet Singh and the original Sheik. That really, was fantastic for me.
Very cool.
But I didn't have to compete. And I was mid-card guy, and I didn't have to compete in those other matches. And it was really cool. Before they started doing a lot of the explosion matches with Terry Funk and things like that.
I always wondered why Terry did those kind of things.
94, 95, 96, and it got crazy. It got insane.
It certainly did. I will let you go fairly soon. I apologize for taking so much of your time, but I love talking to you. A couple more questions for you. You trained cheerleader Melissa. You also trained Missy Hyatt. You mentioned in another interview, and basically, we'll talk about cheerleader Melissa first. She was one of the first that kind of came along in this generation where women were seen less just for being attractive and really were looking at them as a wrestler of the modern era, of this century, which of course is only proven to explode as we've gone on in time. What was it like training a female wrestler like that? And is it different training a female than training a male wrestler?
Yes, it is different training a female. I obviously you have to respect their body parts versus the men's, and it's not always easy finding a second girl wrestler to train with the other girl wrestler. So a lot of times it's man versus woman. And my logic behind just going ahead and doing it was, well, if you're tough enough to handle a guy in the ring, then that's just going to make it that much easier for girl-on-girl wrestling. But where it started with cheerleader Melissa is I trained her dad, Doug Anderson, in 1985.
Wow.
Her dad, and we wrestled as the Anderson brothers, although we were not brothers. Doug was one of my best friends. He was an LA cop for 29 years. He was a fantastic guy. And I knew Melissa from the time she was 3 years old. I used to go over to her house. I used to help change diapers. I lived with Doug for a while, him and his wife, when they were still married. And Doug was a best friend to me. So then you go ahead 15 years later, and then there's Melissa getting older and wanting to break into wrestling. Well, Doug sent her to me and sent her to others like Mondo Guerrero and some other guys around L.A., to get a variety of training. And everybody trains differently, everybody. So I spent a lot of time in the ring with Melissa, and I'm still in touch with her to this day. She lives in Vegas, and her dad has passed away, unfortunately.
Wow.
And it took a chunk of my heart. Doug, thankfully, passed in his sleep of a heart attack several years ago, and he was just a fantastic, great guy. And I'm still very tight with Melissa, and she was great in the ring. She didn't know how to say no, and she was game for everything she needed to learn. A little bit different than Melissa Hyatt, Missy.
What exactly did you train her to do? Because she was not known for wrestling.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
mostly
here's the deal. I was at Slammers Wrestling Gym, running my school in 1990 and 91. And Jason Hervey from the Wonder Years always loved wrestling, and he was getting involved with the NWA and Eric Bischoff and all this stuff. And Missy had long been a valet / manager, and she wanted to get to a point where she could take bumps better or give bumps to other women or men. So it wasn't a serious run at being a wrestler. It was more just, I want to train and learn holds and learn things. And that was her deal. And it kind of faded quickly as, problems in and out with Jason would relate to her no-show in training classes and things like that. But another lady you haven't even mentioned, you probably don't even know, I helped train Magnificent Mimi.
Oh, wow. There you go. Very cool.
And Mimi's situation was real unique. And Louie Spicolli actually helped me with her, too. And Mondo Guerrero also. Mimi had a ring set up in the living room of her house, if you could figure that out. That
must have been a big living room.
That was a great one. Yeah. Well, it was a combination of a large ceiling, high ceiling, but she used a 12-foot ring.
Oh.
So it was funny bouncing the ropes in a living room of like a mansion house in the mountains in L.A. And so, but I had a hand in Mimi's training too, and I always loved Mimi. Oh my God, I wish I would have married her. Well, I guess I would have. I guess she would have had to propose to me.
Very pretty girl too, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh my God, because I did ring announcing for the LPWA, so I knew Mimi so well, and that was back in the early '90s too, and all those
up in
girls,
Laughlin, Nevada, right? I believe that's
Laughlin, at the Riverside. I think we did it, and oh my God, hanging out with Jim Cornette and Ray Stevens was a timekeeper. Such a talented wrestler, and he was reduced down to a timekeeper.
Wow.
Just having some drinks, sitting there with me and laughing on the side, and Joe Pedicino and Bonnie Blackstone, is that her?
Bonnie Blackstone was his wife. Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And oh my God, it takes me back. And Norman the Lunatic, Mike Shaw, what a nice guy. Great friend
I interviewed him, and it broke my heart when we lost him. He was such a sweet guy. He called me up and he says, could you help me with something? And I said, sure. And he said, could you get Ricky Steamboat to sign something? Because at the time I was doing stuff with Bonnie Steamboat. And I was like, sure, yeah, I could do that. And I got him, and he auctioned it off for his church. And he just was the sweetest, nicest guy.
He was.
And so many people don't give him respect, and they say, oh, well, he was Bastion Booger. And it's like, yeah, but he did a lot. And that was good, too, by the way, but he did a lot.
Mike and I were friends back in the old days of the word you never hear anymore, pen pal.
There you go.
We used to write each other. He lived in Scandia, Michigan, and Mike would write me and say, Bill, tell me about your trips to Mexico and this and that. I used to work down there, too, and I'd write him back. We'd write 2-3-page letters to each other. And I absolutely love Mike. The nicest guy, and again, like you say, it breaks your heart when they pass.
Yeah,
and he was a good friend, and I'll never forget Mike Shaw.
Very cool. I promised you I'd let you go soon. I got to ask about the not LPWA, about the American Wrestling Federation, and that was. So I have a picture. I was disappointed when I saw this in the interview because one of the guys that I actually really like, and I have a picture of myself holding the AWF Championship belt next to, is Tito Santana. You said you weren't a big fan of his. I'll let people go to that interview if they want to hear that. But what was it like working there?
I feel bad every time I say that because I know Tito has meant well in the business, and I don't think too many guys worked any harder in the ring than him. There's not absolutely no doubt of that. I just had some personal interactions with him that weren't
it
good.
Happens.
And he broke his finger on the top of my head, which wasn't good for him, or the knot on my head. That would happen in Sacramento at Arco Arena a long time ago. So I liked working for Paul Alberstein and the AWF. The only thing is that I got tired of is we taped about 50 matches a day for 2 days in a row. So I'm ring announcing 100 matches for the same rate of pay as if I did somebody's house show. And I did that in Chicago a couple times, and I did it in Tampa, Florida a couple of times. And it finally came a point where and Tito was my boss. I have to throw that in. Tito was the booker for the promotion. I liked working with all the talent. You know, he had the Road Warriors. I don't know, Hercules. He had the who's who of the business. Tommy Rich, Freebirds. He had everybody. Mr. Hughes. He had so much talent.
I think Sarge was involved. Sergeant Slaughter.
Yeah, Sarge. I think Jim Brunzell. Terry Taylor was one of the announcers.
Tommy Gunn, who was Tom Brandy, and
Tom Brandy. A lot of my friends were there, and it was guys that I'd known for many, many, many years. And I like working for them, but there came a point where I turned down going back to Tampa to do another 100 matches on a 2-day TV taping. It was just so exhausting, and the money wasn't worth it. And I didn't do everything in the business for money. Believe me, I traveled from LA to Phoenix week after week after week after week for $50 a show and a hotel room. I did that and that's a 300-mile drive. I did that 100 times. So everything wasn't done for money. But it came a point where I just turned it down and gave up on the AWF. And I was sad, I know Paul Alberstein has passed away, and he lost millions. He lost everything he had saved and invested in the promotion. He lost it all. So I do.
Billy Silverman. Billy Silverman's another one that was involved.
Billy Silverman is a fantastic friend, one of the best referees ever in the business. And
I was trying to think who had talked to me fairly recently, probably about 5 years ago, about the AWF. And
fantastic guy. And every time I hear a promoter say, like they're going to be the next guy that takes over in the old days, and they're going to knock Vince out of his place or knock Ted Turner out, it's like, yeah, go ahead and be another Paul Alberstein or another Herb Abrams, and go ahead and blow all your money, every cent you've ever earned and saved. blow it. Give the guys bigger payoffs than they've ever had. and all this stuff. And it's like,
I went to on the 4th of July, I went to a show here in Mesa, Arizona. That's where I live. I'm in Mesa.
Yeah.
And it was Phoenix Championship Wrestling, and they have a Slam U. And it was basically a couple of the mainstay guys from Phoenix Championship Wrestling working with some of the younger trainee guys. And I had an absolute ball. It was just down to the basics, old school, work the crowd wrestling, the way that I haven't seen in so long. I had an absolute ball. I was so happy with it. And I know Navajo Warrior is working with guys with Impact Zone Wrestling.
Yeah.
Out here in Arizona, you've been here a lot longer than I have. I moved in 2000 out to Arizona. And when I got here, there wasn't a whole lot that I could find in terms of wrestling. And now there is starting to be a lot going on. What do you think of Arizona finally getting some wrestling going on around here with the rise of popularity?
Here's the thing. I moved back here in 2005 from California myself. And so I've been back here 20 years this time. I went to high school here in the 70s. And then I moved all over the country. I lived in California a number of years. I lived in Chicago for 7 years. I lived all over the place through the decades. When I first came back here, Navajo was running his was Impact Zone Wrestling, IZW. And Steve's an old friend of mine. I've known Steve for since the late '80s when he broke in with Steve Gatorwolf. I used to take guys on the Indian reservation from California. I used to load my car up, maybe 2 cars full of guys, Louie Spicolli and Tim Patterson and different guys through the years. And I think Steve had his first match against Spicolli. And so Steve's a very, very old friend of mine. I have a lot of respect for him. He's done tremendous things. And he's obviously really beefed up over the years. His arms now are bigger than his thighs were back in the 80s and 90s. And but the wrestling's come a long way, and I get invited. Somebody sends me an invite to a lot of shows. I haven't been to any indie shows since I went to one of Steve's shows back in probably about 2007 or 2008. And I just kind of just lost interest a lot in the wrestling business because it became what I would call a testosterone promotion. It's the guys are working to outwork each other to prove they're stronger and bigger, and they could do more high spots and faster time than you can do them. And they're just like all pumped up with nowhere to go. And I just got tired of some of the mentality of that, of watching it. Even on Steve's shows, I like the guys, all the guys there. They were friends of mine, but I just kind of got burned out on the business, and I'm so far removed into the old school stuff, and give me 60s, 70s, 80s wrestling, and that's what I love, and you know.
I'm with you. Well, I want to thank you for taking so much time to do this with me. Is there anything you'd like to promote? I know you have a few books that have been out for a little while now, but is there anything you'd like to promote and things that people can reach out and touch up base with you about?
Not really. To be honest with you, I'm not really promoting anything.
That's my favorite kind of guest.
I'm promoting, trying to get my health back and where I can walk longer distances and maybe get back into my cemetery grave hunting that I like to do, which is my real passion in life, to be honest with you. And I like looking at graves and visiting and paying my respects to my friends' graves. Some here in Phoenix, Superstar Billy Graham and Eddie Guerrero are only about 30 feet apart from each other in Scottsdale.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know that was that close. Wow.
Yeah. It's in the back of the cemetery, Billy and Eddie. And I was at both of their funerals. And in the church and at the service at the graveside. And I could do one thing I want to just say. I was very, very disappointed in Billy's funeral that more name stars didn't turn out for his church service. The only names that came, and they were very old names, is Ron Pritchard, who played was a wrestler, obviously, and he played pro football with the Oilers and the Bengals. And then Steve Strong from California came, and Rock Riddle from California came, and then there was just me and Jody Arnold, another local wrestler here in Arizona from the 70s, and Jesse Hernandez from California came, and that was it. That was all the wrestlers that came, and I was very disappointed. I honestly expected Ric Flair to walk through the door, or this guy or that guy or this guy or that guy. And Jesse Ventura sent a very nice letter talking about Billy and what he meant to the business. But I just thought there'd be more of a turnout in that respect. There's more pro football players than there were wrestlers.
Wow.
So, anyway, it is what it is. We can't go back and do anything about it.
Yeah.
But it was a sad day for sure, and it was an open casket at the church, and it was very nice to say goodbye to my friend, and who I had been friends with for 40 years, and we lost a true legend, no different than Hulk Hogan,
Yeah.
Well, actually, Hulk Hogan is different. I mean, he transcends all entertainment. He goes into that realm of like Muhammad Ali and John Wayne and that kind of an athlete or a prominent entertainer. His name is known worldwide.
Absolutely.
So God rest Hulk Hogan's soul. He deserves it, and he deserves some rest on that weary body. He entertained the hell out of people for a long, long time, and
yes, he did.
I'm thankful I got to meet him and hang out just a little bit with him. And
So I was the main guy on my radio show, and I had two co-hosts because the station mandated I had to have two people to play off, I guess, to stop me from rattling off at the mouth and keep me on point. And I was the one who also booked the guests, and when I booked Billy Graham, I was like, holy mother of pearl, this is Billy Graham that's going to be doing my show. And I was seeing it as the hugest thing in the world, and I was so honored when Dark Side of the Ring reached out and said, can we use clips of that? I'm thinking he must have done a billion different things, but to take a few from me, it meant the world.
Exactly.
It meant the absolute world.
Just like I said, when I think back on every wrestler he's come in contact with, which is, Abdullah the Butcher, the Brody, and everybody in between, I'm one, calling Bill Anderson and saying, would you like to be a guest on this Dark Side episode? Say, are you kidding me? Yes, I'd be a guest.
Absolutely.
I'd be honored, truly honored. And
I'm glad they had you on there, sir. And I was glad that I got a chance to see you on there, and it was awesome. And like I said with Rod Price, your name just kept popping up. So I'm glad that we managed to finally sit down and do something. I didn't really get the chance to talk about poor Rod on the show, but I will just say Rod came into class right after trading Sting and Warrior. It was him and another guy named Biff Anderson and some other guys who were coming through the school. And I was real busy during that time wrestling myself, in Mexico and other places. But I attended training class whenever I could and didn't play hooky. Yep, and Rod is one of the nicest guys in the world. I sent a message to him, and
Very true.
I started talking to him just because other guys. I was doing stuff about Global, like a 20-year anniversary, and then all of a sudden we just kept talking, and I thought, you know what, this guy is the nicest guy in the world, so I wish him nothing but the best. And speaking of which,
you are, James.
I thank you so much for hanging with me this long. I apologize for taking up so much of your day.
Brother, anytime, you got me. And like I said, we're in agreement on several things. And I respect that more than you know in this day and age. And
having the courage to say it, is what it comes down to.